welcome back to our book series on the Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Today we're going to take a closer look on Chapter 3. This chapter discusses how the division of labor is limited by the extent of the market. So Adam Smith is building on a premise already established in the second chapter, that the power of exchange is what leads to the division of labor. So now he's building on that premise and saying, the more people we're able to exchange with, the more we're going to be able to divide the labor in that industry. In other words, the bigger the market, the more the division of labor will occur. According to Smith, some industries and occupations can only be present in a large town. He gives the example of a porter, which is basically somebody who just carries stuff for other people, and how this job might not be relevant in a small town. This is because in small towns, there's less diversity of demand and less quantity of demand for really niche jobs, services, and products. So even further, in villages where people might be more spread apart, it's more logical for them to take up multiple tasks within the economy. This is because the distance between people makes it more efficient for people to just do certain things, like making their own bread or their own beer on their own, than finding someone to exchange it with. The decrease in demand also makes it more logical for people of one trade to take up multiple tasks within that trade instead of just focusing on one kind of product. For example, it might be illogical for a woodworker just to make wooden chairs instead of making all kinds of wood products, because there wouldn't be enough people to buy simply just wood chairs. So in order to sustain a living, he has to take up all kinds of wood crafts. In other words, there's less benefits to specialization because specialization would lead to more production than there is demand for. Adam Smith now points out that this explains the importance of transportation, both in interconnecting a country within itself and opening the country up to trading outside with other countries. In both instances, these improvements of transportation open the market up to more demand. He argues that this interconnectedness precedes the improvement of manufacturing and of society itself. He then focuses on how moving large amounts of goods with ships is the most efficient way of transportation. He delved into some historical examples for this, the first being the Mediterranean Sea. Proximity to the islands, as well as mild sailing conditions, led to an earlier development of civilization in this area. And this is before people felt comfortable sailing into the larger oceans due to a lack of compasses at the time. Smith argues this is one of the main reasons we saw early civilizations, such as the Greeks or the Egyptians. For Egypt, being interconnected with the Nile and the canals that broke off of it was an additional advantage. The extent and the easiness of this inland navigation was probably one of the principal causes of the early improvement of Egypt. And then Smith also argues that the opposite is likely true. Areas of Africa and large parts of Asia, which are uncivilized at present, are also areas that are difficult to navigate and interconnect. So in conclusion, these points that Adam Smith made about 250 years ago are still somewhat true. New transportation technologies like cars and planes had massive impacts on economically developing rural areas. Also today, the most advanced economies tend to have larger portions of urban populations. More urban areas tend to have more advanced economies, and Adam Smith would argue that this is because the urban areas provide more opportunity for the division of labor. And lastly, in regards to Adam Smith's points about transportation, it's worth noting that today's 20 largest cities are located right on the coast or by large rivers.